Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Racer on Demand show. We're here, episode number 4. And today we are asking the question, what if you were naked? And that's a wild question just to kick a show off with. But I just wanted to bring forward a story. Last year, the beginning of our race season, there was a truck that went out on track that didn't have any sponsor logos on it or anything. And it took me like a solid day to realize that I knew the driver, I knew the truck, but I didn't recognize him because his sponsor's logos were not on the truck anymore. It was just a plain truck with a plain logo on the side that I didn't recognize, and there was nothing really distinguishing about it. And it got me thinking about if we pulled the logos off of our vehicles, if we changed the colors that were printed on our team shirts and trailers, how would people know who I am, who our team is, who you are, Megan? And what does that really mean to have a brand? So that's what I want to talk about today.
Yes. Let's get deep.
Yes, we're getting really deep because this is really important. This is why sponsors partner with people. It's why fans follow racers. This is what it really means when people say you have a brand. It's what you are without the logos, without the colors. It's who you are. So, Megan, I'm going to ask you the deep question. If you didn't have any sponsor logos on your car, if you didn't have any kind of specific wrap or anything, like, how would people know it's you and your team?
Yes, good question. My background's design. Whenever someone's like, "Hey, can you make me a brand?" Like, they usually just think it's a logo or, like, the color scheme. But, yeah, it's way more than that. It's like, yeah, what are your values? What are you known for? What's your legacy? What's your reputation? And, again, to quote Alex Stryler, because he's constantly in my head, and, like, I just quote him all the time, but in his book, he talks about the tangible assets you have, but then there's also the intangible assets, and that is what elevates your worth and what you can charge for sponsors. So I feel like that's like, yeah, what we're talking about today. So for me, I feel like I am, especially the last few years, have really gone into the coaching and education side of motorsports just because I feel like there is a gap there. And when I was getting started, I really had no idea what to do, and there wasn't much education online. Now, this was also a time when, like, digital media, social media was still, like, fairly new, so there really wasn't anybody that had, like, nailed down what worked yet. So that's what I've been focusing on, but also, the last 5 years, I've become a mom. I've become a lot more family oriented, and I have some boundaries, I guess, when it comes to what companies that I want to work with. So, say a company came to me that promoted a nicotine chew or gum or something like that, because I know that's kinda getting popular, but that kinda goes against my personal values, and I don't want to be promoting something that has a bad product, an addictive product into it when I know there's going to be kids watching me, because I am younger, but I also have a son, and I know there's other parents that are watching me, so just knowing kind of what it is that my values are, what I stand for, what I don't stand for, but also trying not to be too much at the same time. Like, I try not to share anything about politics or religion or anything that's, like, super controversial on my socials, because I know it could maybe start something, but also that's kinda how I am in my regular life, I guess you could say. Like, I do try to stay away from that as much as I can. Whenever I am, like, posting online or talking to people at events and hanging out with fans, like, just trying to make sure that, yeah, they do see me as a regular person and kinda know my personality, what my reputation is, and that way I do, just by being me, I'm able to stand out from other people, because being a female in motorsports is kind of rare, but it's not as rare as it used to be. But so how can I stand out from you and from the other girls that are in motorsports? And we've all got different ways, different personalities, different things that we value. And so I feel like just making sure that you do communicate that, especially when you're also trying to pitch sponsors, because they want to make sure that they pick someone who's an ambassador that also aligns with their values. Like I know, for example, there's a company that is kind of more open, I guess, with sexuality and they don't mind posting girls wearing bikinis, whereas there's one of their competitors is complete opposite, and they're very family oriented and they would never post anything like that. So for me, it's like I lean towards the one that is more conservative just because that's how I am personally, but also I feel like the companies would recognize that as well, and I would not be appealing to the one that is more into the girls in bikinis, right?
Yes. Yes. You know, and I think too, it's like your sponsor alignment makes a difference with that, but so too does your fan alignment. Like fans who really want to see racers in bikinis draped over cars probably aren't going to be your biggest fans, but maybe the dad who's really passionate about bringing his little one to the track is your biggest fan, because he sees the similarity in values there too.
Yeah, yeah, I think so too, and especially dads that have little girls, I think they are way more open to seeing this online, and whereas maybe they were not before they had a daughter. So yeah, so I'll get parents every now and then that will like message me, and it just, it makes me feel good because I feel like I am putting out a proper image of my brand and who I am as a person. I know, like, not everybody has to do that, but I think it goes a lot further when you are just more professional and more conscious about the image that you want to put out there. And some people, they don't care at all, and they're like, "Hey, I'm being 100% me," and it might not work for majority of the people, of the fans and sponsors, but that's okay. You do
Yeah.
you.
And you know what though? Like sometimes those people get noticed the most because they're so eccentric, right? Like I'm thinking
Mhm.
about, I don't know, like a lot of the YouTube personalities that are out there,
Yeah.
right? They lean really heavily into things that are kind of controversial. Maybe not controversial, but loud and like straightforward and like this personality that is solely them. That's a brand too. I'm thinking even about like Brian Deegan, right? He's got
Yeah.
like this persona that he puts out there as being like Brian Deegan, like that's just like this loud, raw, like kind of crazy like persona that he puts out there. And like that is his brand. It may or may not be who he is as a person, and I think for a lot of people, like, being inauthentic in a persona could be really tiring, but sometimes
Yeah.
that's what sells and what connects to people too, right? Like, people maybe wish they could be that way, or, like, a brand uses that because it maybe, like, Monster Energy, right? Like, Monster Energy has that kind of raw, out there branding, and that connects
Yeah.
really well with somebody who's, like, really raw and out there, but like Monster Energy is probably not going to pick out somebody who doesn't have a solid stance for things and plays it like politically safe. But there are other brands and other fans who will because it relates more to them.
Yeah, well, it's like if you look at the athletes who are sponsored by Monster, like, versus Red Bull, like, you can kinda see the ones that are sponsored by Monster are more of the ones that are kinda just there, like, to put on a show, like, to get the attention, but Red Bull, and this is, like, my perspective on it, Red Bull cares more about racers that win, they want racers that are gonna be on podiums, so they're not quite as loud and out there, but they have that reputation on the track or in their sport of being the best. I feel like there's so many different differentiators when it comes to companies and their values and their goals. And I think racers kind of fall into a trap of like, well, I would just want to be sponsored by anybody. And it's like,
Yes.
well, you really need to know what your brand is to know if it is a good fit for that brand. Would you be better off with Monster, or would you be a better ambassador for Red Bull? And I think sometimes racers don't think that deep about it.
No. Okay, so I'm afraid if I pull it off my shelf, I'm gonna pull everything else off my shelf too. But on the very top is the one that I reference the most, and it's called This Is Marketing by Seth Godin. And in the book, he talks about differentiating your brand. And this is not motorsports specific. He's actually talking about a service provider or like a business, but it applies really readily to racers too. But he talks about when you are trying to find your audience, which as a racer is your fans and your partners. But when you're trying to find your audience, you want to attract the minimum viable audience, not everybody,
Mm,
but
yeah.
a niche of people that will 100% back you. And he talks about building a matrix. So, like, you draw out like an up and down line, a side to side line, and you've got those four quadrants. And on the side to side line, you put one thing that is like strongly something you value and something that your target audience would value. So, like, we did this with VDE racing, right? So VDE racing, we stand for family first and foremost, right? So family is on one of our lines, and the opposite of that would be like individualistic, like self-serving, right? So we've got kind of a line that goes from individualistic to a family atmosphere. And then up and down, we put another value that we stand for. So we might do connection is another big one. So connection up at the top versus like doing my own thing, like don't care about connecting with anybody at the bottom, right? And so we've got, this connectivity line and we've got this family line. And in the top quadrant where they all intersect, we're going to have those people who really care about making genuine connections and about people who really have like this strong family drive. And that's our audience. Those are the brands that we relate to the most. That is who we are as a team. And if we look at the other quadrants, we look and there's maybe people who really care about genuine connections, but they don't give a flying flip about family, right? So we might hit them once in a while where they're like, yeah, they're pretty cool. They might support us here and there, but they're never going to be like our drop dead loyal fans because they don't support everything that we do. And the same thing, for the people who maybe don't care at all about connection, but feel strongly about family, they're going to be hit or miss here and there. But in that bottom quadrant, you've got the people who don't care about either of them. And I think the biggest mistake that we make as racers, as business people, is we focus on that quadrant the most. And we say, how do we
Mhm,
get those people to support us? Instead of focusing on the quadrant of the people who already align really well with our values and leaning really heavily into that one. So that's something that I grabbed from that book. And I think about it with everything that I post, everything that we do as a team, all of the activations that we do, even how we set up our pit spaces. It all comes down to like, how do we get those values out there in a way that's consumable by the people that actually care about those things?
mhm. Yeah, I love that. And I feel like an exercise like that could be so simple to do, but it's so overlooked. We see what someone is doing and how they're setting up their pit area. And it's like, oh, okay, well, that works really well for them. So I'm just going to do it for me.
Yes.
And yeah, it might not be the best option for you, but we're like, it's proven to be successful. So it's got to work for me. And it might not. And it might not always be. And it might not bring in those number one quadrant people that you were talking about.
I think a lot of times we also look at what other racers or other companies are doing and we're like, I would never do it that way. It's clearly wrong. And that's not true either. The first couple of years of Prospect, there were only like a handful of us. The first year, there was only four of us, right? And on the track, like Chris and Nick Visser used to like get into each other constantly. And so many people were trying to drive a rivalry that just didn't exist. Like we get along with Nick
Mm,
just fine. It
yeah.
was just like aggression on the track. And Chris doesn't drive aggressively on the track. Like that's just not really his style. That's not his brand, right? But for Nick, it was, and that is not something that we would internalize in our brand, but that doesn't mean that it's wrong. And he built a strong fan base built off of being such an aggressive or assertive driver on the track. he, won a lot of races. He definitely wasn't out there just sucking it up. But I think that that's something too, like just because it's not the right fit for us doesn't mean that it's wrong. And that goes for other racers, that goes for other companies too. Like you said, you wouldn't partner with a company that's promoting, a nicotine gum or something. But that doesn't mean that another racer wouldn't or couldn't or
Mhm.
shouldn't. Like if that's like a product that they use all the time and their demographic is, 18-year-old men who are in blue collar jobs and they would buy the crap out of that product, like why wouldn't you?
Yeah. So as you were saying that, like, the person that popped into my head is Adrian Cheney, because like, he's just like wreckers or checkers, and, like, he's so
Yes.
fun to watch because he might not win every race, but he's a very entertaining driver to watch because it's like, he's gonna have an accident. It's like every race,
Yes.
and so that's like, yeah, his brand, and, like, people know him as that. He could have companies that sponsor him that are kind of more of, like, the risk takers and ones that might not care about getting podium every race, but, like, they still want that visibility and exposure that he could get by being on camera every time he flips over or something.
Yes. He could be the one with the sticker underneath?
Yes. Yeah, I love what you said about how, yeah, it's just because it's not for me doesn't mean it's not for everybody. Because we all have our own different audiences. Like you said, like, for us, like, they are very similar, but I don't think they're 100% overlapping. Just like how, like, a workout program isn't gonna work for every person out there, like, it's so individualized, and marketing and branding and sponsorship is just the same. I mean, there's what, millions, billions of creators out there, and like we are all different in our own ways, and that's a good thing. From my experience, like with talking with companies and hearing from them, like what it is that they look for when they decide to sponsor a racer is they want someone that does have an established brand, whether that's on social media or more at the track, but someone that is well known and someone that does kinda have that established reputation. So whether you could be someone that's more aggressive and more wild and more out there, or someone that's more conservative, just like your spectrum, like there's a whole different range for racers. Like, we need to pick where we want to be and then go deep with it instead of just, like, trying to be safe and just, like, just, like, dipping your toes in the water. Like, I think, like,
Yes.
once you figure out, like, what your values are, what you stand for, what you want your brand to be, like, what you want people to say about you when you're not in the room, like, that is where you need to just go all in with it.
You were talking a lot about how sponsors are looking for these established brands, people who have like a strong following, a strong brand, but I don't think most people know where to start to even like build that from the ground up. And so when you said find your values and then go deep into them, lean hard into them, I think that is so powerful because if you don't put down that foundational work of understanding like who you are and what you stand for and what you want to be known for, and I love you just said like what people say about you when you're not in the room, right? What do people consistently expect from you? If you don't intentionally build that, it's A, going to be built for you. People will still say things about you when you're not in the room. It just might not be what you want them to. But B, if you're kind of flip floppy on what you stand for or those values that you're pushing, then you're not going to have a very strong brand. You're not going to get fans. You're not going to get sponsors. So, how do you lean into those values? How do you think that looks, to start from the ground up?
Yeah, good question. So, for me, my main focus is with social media, and so, for me, it's like whenever you are posting out there, like, think before you publish of like, "Hey, like, is this really something that represents me? Am I truly comfortable with this?" Because stuff out there on the internet is out there forever. I mean, hopefully everybody knows that, but, like, even if you delete something, like, there's still a trail of it somewhere, and, like, You can go and see my old high school senior photos on Google that I posted on some random social media platform, and I have no idea what my login is, so I can't go in there and, like, take it down or anything, but, like, if you look hard enough on Google, like, you can go see these, like, bad high school photos.
Everybody's Googling it right
Yeah,
now.
now everyone's gonna look. I guess think long term, like, is this still something you would be comfortable with 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road? I mean, there's pictures where it's like, okay, like a picture of me at a party, like drinking a beer. 10, 15 years ago, like when I was 21, I would post that. But now it's like, no, like, I'm not gonna post that just because somehow that could bite me in the butt down the
Yeah.
road. Or I could lose a deal because a sponsor is like, "Oh, we found this photo of you partying and raging," and, like, that's, like, not doesn't align with our brand, and, like, we don't want ambassadors who are like that. So, it's just
Yes.
think twice about it
Yes.
before you do post anything online. I mean, like I said, I don't post anything political because I have heard from companies that they have dropped someone, especially when everything with Trump, the first election was huge and people would be so, like, so persistent on supporting Trump and, like, they were putting stickers on their cars and, like, some people would do, like, a whole wrap on their car, and the companies are like, "Whoa, like, we don't support Trump, so we're not gonna sponsor you because we don't want our name next to his name."
We had that happen.
Yeah?
We got a cease and desist from a sponsor. They were a really small sponsor, but, like, just product. It wasn't even, like, Chris and I posting, but Chris's dad posted something about Trump. Chris and I were really careful about the things that we post, like, nobody even
Mhm.
knows what our political stance is, and we're just gonna keep it that way.
Yeah.
But, Dave made a post on his personal page, nothing to do with racing at all, and we got a cease and desist to immediately take off anything to do with this sponsor. So,
Yeah.
that's real life. That is
Yeah.
absolutely real life.
Yeah. Yeah, I know there's in drag racing is huge, and, like, with Dave or, like, with your crew guys, like, even if they post something, like, they don't realize, like, it's still tied back to
Yes.
your racing brand. And, yeah, and, like, we would have a crew guy, like, wear a Trump shirt or wear a Trump hat, and it's like, "Whoa, like, you can't go on the starting line with that where there's cameras, and, like, we can't risk that." And
Yes.
they're just like, they don't think about it. They're like, "Oh, well, I'm just supporting who I like." And it's like, "No, but
Yes.
you have to realize, like, the bigger picture here is it's gonna affect the whole team and affect all of us." So, yeah, so for me, like, my default is when it comes to media, when it comes to social media content, anything you're putting out there, just be so aware of the reach it has, of the longevity it has. As racers, like, we are public figures, and the more you do grow your brand, there's gonna be more people that support you, but there's also probably gonna be more people that don't support you and might have the intentions of wanting to tear you down. So they might be trying to look for something that's their own problem. But yeah, you just never know.
Yeah. Okay, so, you positioned that as, this is out there forever. Make sure that you double check everything that you post before you post it to make sure it aligns with your brand. I am going to offer the advice that honestly, I wouldn't post anything if it doesn't directly support the values. So I see a lot of racers put out a lot of fluff for posts,
Mm,
right? Like happy hump day, and it's a picture of them jumping their race car. Like every single racer puts that out there. It's the exact same. There is no value there. There's nothing for a fan to go, wow, I really relate to that. There's nothing for a sponsor to say, wow, that really represents like the values that we align with, right?
mhm,
My piece of advice is as you're crafting your posts, your messaging, everything that you do, like I said, even the way that our pits are set up, right? Everything that you do that's public facing in any capacity, from the merch you design to the layout of your pits to the livery on your car to every single post that you put out on Facebook, ask yourself, how are my values represented in what I'm doing right now? And I think that is the fastest way to grow a solid fan base and a brand that is recognizable enough that a sponsor would say, "Wow, that really fits what we're doing here too." I'm gonna shamelessly plug. I did a build an intentional brand workshop. I can post the link in the show notes too. I have a self-paced guide where you can go through the workshop and use ChatGPT for parts of it to build content based off of your brand and your values and help you write a 30-day content calendar that directly highlights your values and the goals that you have in place for your program too. I think it is just so important to drive those values into everything that you do, social media being a huge part of that.
Yeah, anything that has your name or your logo, you need to make sure that it's got your values tied to it. So for me, like as a designer, we've been taught when like a client comes to you and they're like, "Hey, like we want a logo." The first thing they do is we ask them like, "Do you have your brand standards or it's called like a style guide?" Usually they'll have like a packet that the company will give to the designer that has like, okay, here's our mission statement, here's our values, like here's our audience. And that still applies to a race team. Like a race team should be treated like a business. So you still need to have that packet for you. Like even if you don't have a logo, like the logo is kind of one of the last things that you need. You need to make sure that you have like your mission statement and your guidelines all set up first because that will affect the visuals and everything else. But I feel like just not just in racers, but even just companies or just individuals that I've had as clients, like you see the logo first, so you think that's what I need first, but really there's a whole lot of other steps that come before the logo. And the visuals is just the fun part to tie it all together. And like same thing to go with like, yeah, your merchandise, your livery, the wrap on your trailer, like all of it needs to be cohesive, but it needs to all have the same message.
When I think of a strong brand, I think of Kyle LeDuc. He could have no panels on his truck at all, and if you saw him out there racing, you knew it was Kyle just from the way that he was driving because he drove his truck so hard. I think about when he showed up at Fall Crandon and he had a completely chrome vinyl wrap on his truck and the flashy driving and the like high impact, like bam, there he is, just showed up perfectly in the way that he presented the visual aspect of his truck too. When I'm just thinking about like branding and visuals and graphics and things, I always think about that. Like, how do I take who I am and turn it into something that just visually says that?
Hmm. Yeah. Well, and like in my mind, someone that comes to my mind is Dale Earnhardt because I recently watched the documentary, which is so good. So everyone who's listening and watching, I recommend that because I honestly didn't know anything about Earnhardt because that was before my time. So it was really cool to learn about him. But yeah, he had such a unique driving style. Like he was the aggressive one. He was the bad guy who would crash anyone that was in front of him.
Yeah.
And yeah, I feel like if he had no sponsors, like, you would know that that was Earnhardt in the car driving just by the way of his driving style. And trying to, like, relate that to drag racing, like, there are a handful of cars that look exactly the same. It's all black carbon fiber, and especially in our class, because it's, like, really a lot of people that we race with don't have sponsors, like, it's all just self-funded,
Yeah.
and so they don't really have very many stickers to put on the car, or it's just contingency stickers is all they have, and so they all look exactly the same, and so it is hard for a company to pick you out of everybody else with that has a white trailer and a black race car, and it's like, "Why should we pick you?" Like, you're like, yeah, like, we don't know who you are or what you stand for or your style, your brand, other than how you drive on the track, but in drag racing, it is because it is so short, there's not a whole lot of varying style to driving because pretty much everyone does the exact same thing in the same order, so, there's really once you step on the gas, there's really nothing else you can do unless it loses traction or loses control. One thing that my dad has always made one of his priorities is like, even if we don't have a sponsor, like we want the car to look different. Like one year he had a all yellow car. The next year was all red. Like he and he would kind of stay within the same color palette, like red and yellow is usually racing colors. But again, like back then he was just self-funded. He didn't really have any sponsors. And so it would be his logo, the Meyer Truck Center company logo on the side of the car, but he'd switch up the design and do like, okay, this year we're gonna do a stripe like this, and then the next year we'll paint another stripe. So because we had a paint booth at the shop, so it's like, okay, we could paint it. Like we had the ability to change the color.
Yeah.
So, but he was always like, I don't want to look like everyone else. Like we do want to stand out. And so that's something that was drilled into my head early on. And one of the reasons why I did eventually go into a path to be a designer is because I I like the creativity of it. And even still to this day, it's like I would say half of our class is still just black race cars.
I remember when we were trying to figure out what color to make our team. We're purple. We're very purple. Everything we do is purple. And that wasn't always that way. The first year, we had our buggies all dressed like fighter planes. And so it was like
Okay.
gray and green. And Andy, Chris's brother, he was moving from light buggy into a 1600 buggy. And he bought Cynthia Gauthier's old car. And it was this flashy purple high metallic fleck on the fiberglass hood. And it was very, very purple. And he bought it and immediately brought it to Crandon, so he didn't have time to, like, dress it up or anything, and he put it on the track, and we are like, "Wow, you can actually see that really well from the spotters tower," which was a huge bonus.
Ooh, yeah.
But when we got it back into the pit, all of the kids walking by going, "Look, the purple one." And, like, us being so family focused, we were like, "The kids love the purple car. Like, let's do all of our cars purple next year." And it was just gonna
Yeah.
be 1 year, but then it was, "Daddy, mommy, look at the purple team." And so as kids embraced it, so did we. Our color is solely because of our value for family. Now we all love purple because it's our
Mhm.
color, but,
Yeah.
we didn't just, like, pick a color out of random because it was one of our favorite colors. It was because of the fans loving it, the fans that we wanted to attract loving it, that we decided to put that onto our color scheme.
Well, and that kinda goes into what we said, like, once you pick what you're gonna do, and then, like, you just go all in with it, and yeah,
Yes.
so now how long have you guys had the purple cars now?
So that was probably 6 or 7 years ago, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, but now everything's purple. I mean, our race trailer's purple, half of Chris's socks are purple, my walls are purple.
Right? Well, purple is one of my favorite colors too. That was when like, as a kid, we did have a paint shop, like, we were able to pick, like, what we wanted the cars to be and stuff, and so I would do, like, yeah, different versions of purple with my junior dragsters. We also had like a purple cage and frame and all that stuff to go with it too. But then when I turned 16 was when I moved up to the next class, which is called Super Comp. And we bought a car from Jags. And so it was bright yellow, every panel just yellow with Jags on it. And obviously, like, we couldn't keep that. We weren't sponsored by Jags or anything like that. So we had to change it, and yellow's not really my color anyways. So it was like, well, what do we wanna do? And so my dad had actually picked magenta because back in, like, the early '90s, for a year or 2, he had a car that was magenta. So he was like, "Let's do this color," and I was just like, "Okay." Like, I like pink, I like purple. We did it, but that was also a time when I was kinda going through, like, my emo phase, and so it's like, "Okay, it can be pink, but, like, I want skulls all over it."
Yes. Let's be realistic, it's not a phase.
Yeah, we had a friend that airbrushed and, like, he painted me a helmet to match, and I it was, like, so cool. But, yeah, so, like, the whole front of it is, like, these skulls and, like, flames and all that in black, and then the car was magenta, and I love it, and it's still painted to we sold the car, which I loved that car, but I had no choice to keep it. My dad sold both of my race cars, but kept both of my sisters. But yeah, it's still painted. The guy who has it now, Spencer, it's still the same. That kind of helped me shape the visual side of my brand, because at that time I was like I was getting out of the kids class, and so it's like, okay, like you're getting into a faster car, like you need to take this more seriously. Like it's a lot more work, and it's more expensive. So we actually need to start like trying to find some money to run this car. And so that was when like I really started doing the marketing for our team, and we had a driver at the time who was actually working for us to help pay for her fees to rent the car. So like she made us a website, she made us a email list, all the stuff that we didn't have before. And so I got to learn from her the marketing side, the creative side. She was a photographer, so she kind of helped show me how to take pictures and all that. But yeah, that was also where like the design stuff started too, because it's like, okay, what does Megan Meyer Racing look like? How is this gonna be different from Randy Meyer Racing? Yeah, it just kinda it's evolved over time, but, like, yeah, that was what I started with.
You're talking about, like, evolution of your brand, which I think is a very real thing. But I think there's also, like, deviation from brand, and that can be really detrimental to a company or a racer. Have you ever seen or have you ever done something inconsistent with a brand that made you feel differently about that product or the person?
I can't really think of one, like, in the racing industry, but what does pop to the top of my head is just because of how, like, controversial it was, but the Cracker Barrel logo, when that changed.
Yeah.
'Cause everyone was I thought it looked fine, like, the modern style of it, and I didn't think it was, like, a huge, like, drastic difference, but, yeah, I just, like, modernized the logo, and people were, like on social media, they're like, "We hate this new logo, like, we're never going to Cracker Barrel again," and it's like, this just goes to show you, it didn't stick to their values of being, like, more traditional, and so people were like, "This is not, like, the same," like, it
Yeah.
did hurt them, and I think the lady that was the president, I think she got let go because of that.
Yes. Yes. That's such a great example because their brand is literally built on old-timey nostalgia. Like,
Yes.
how do you try to modernize old-timey nostalgia? That's a great example. I also think about the Jaguar rebranding.
Oh, yes.
When that
That
came
one
out,
too.
again, not racing per se, but Jaguar, like, had this lineup of, like, sportier cars throughout the history of the company, and then for them to just kind of, like, kick all of that to the curb for this pinky out, I'm all
Yeah.
electric now, and we're just focused more on, like, art and pastels and things.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember those commercials, it was very weird. Well, and another one is Budweiser. I don't wanna upset anybody, but when they came out with the can, I don't know, it's gotta be, like, at least 2 or 3 years ago, but it was, like, the gay pride can,
Yeah.
but that really ruffled some feathers because they lost a lot of their customers and a lot of their market because of that, because they were trying to get into a different market, and my dad was a loyal Bud Light drinker, and he refuses still to this day, he will not buy or drink Bud Light, even though I don't think they actually came out with the can, and that's, like, the only beer he would ever drink. So now he's a Busch Light guy, which is it's the same thing.
I thought you were gonna say, "And now he's sober."
Oh, no. No.
Yeah. Okay. So that is a really powerful example because we've kind of talked around like bringing politics and, like really controversial viewpoints into your own brand. But when we talk about that, you're talking about bringing something really divisive into your brand
Yeah.
and like internalizing that. Like if I were to start going on Facebook and posting about anything polarizing that isn't already a core part of my brand, let's say politics, right? If I chose like one political side and started really strongly leaning into it, but that's not something that I had ever done before, I'm alienating half of my demographic and they are going to leave. Now, I might attract new people that also feel really strongly about this new thing, but I've already lost half my demographic. And I think that that really highlights like the Budweiser thing, right? The perception was right leaning because the demographic that consumes the product was primarily right leaning, but that wasn't necessarily true for the brand. Like people might assume because we race in off road that we are really right leaning. That may or may
Mhm,
not be true, but if it isn't true, like I don't necessarily want to bring that in and alienate my demographic either.
mhm.
So I
Yeah,
think that's something really strong to consider is your brand is oftentimes dictated just how people perceive you, not necessarily the actual way
mhm.
that you are.
Yeah, yeah. Well, like you said earlier, people will talk about you, like, when you're not in the room, and so it's like, what do you want them to say? And so, yeah, I think we can kinda control that narrative by how we act, what we post, how we race, and just, yeah, being more conscious about it instead of just thinking like, "Oh, it doesn't affect me." Because
Yeah.
especially if you are a racer, like, wanting to get a bigger fan base and get bigger sponsorships, like, you've gotta really think about this stuff and consider it because you're not just Joe Schmo who just goes out to the track on the weekends to race for fun. Like, you gotta take it serious, you've gotta build your business, you've gotta build your brand, and these are all things you need to think about.
And I like the way that you're bringing that back to like truly marketing a business because I keep thinking to myself, like, we're talking to racers and we're talking to a lot of racers that don't know where to start. We talked about posting consistently and acting consistently with your brand, but like, how do you even get people to that point? And in a business, when you're a startup and you're starting from ground zero, what do? You market yourself. And marketing isn't just going out there and posting into the void and hoping somebody finds it, but it's advertising and showing up for your community and getting in front of people in creative ways. And I think racers could really benefit from thinking that way about their brand too. For example, one of the ways that we've really grown our brand locally is we show up to community events that represent our values. One of my favorite events that we've ever done, and we've done crazy things like SEMA and going out to Glen Helen and all these races. One of my favorite things we've ever done was this trunk or treat 3 miles from our house where we brought out the Pro Spec and the Beetle, and we had kids sitting in the cars and stuff. And we live in a tiny town of like 2,000 people. And we had, gosh, we brought almost 500 hero cards with us and we ran out. We had so many people come through, but
Mhm.
now we've got that creative way of building a fan base locally and getting in front of people now who resonate with like our community and our family values because we were at a family event. And how can you get really creative about finding your demographic? And I think that that starts with understanding your demographic too. You know,
I
I'm not
see.
going to take an off-road race truck to, I don't know, like a,
To a strip club.
well, I don't know, maybe the demographic is similar, but yeah, like to somewhere where like people aren't going to appreciate an off-road race truck, right? Like if I brought an off-road race truck to Road America where they're racing like motorcycles or something,
Yeah.
there's probably not going to be a ton of people that are like super excited about this racetrack because they are super excited about on track motorcycles. And the same goes for like where you're positioning yourself to become more visible. Like, for example, Valvoline leans really heavily into this kind of clean image of like high end white glove service, right? Well, our sport is dirty as hell. And if I showed up at like a corporate event for Valvoline with this dirty race truck that does dirty things, it's probably not going to attract the amount of people as it would if I brought it to the county fair where there's a demo derby.
Mhm. Yeah.
So, how can you get creative about getting in front of people in the first place?
Well, one thing that we used to do all the time was we would bring our cars to schools, to elementary schools. This was when I was in college. I worked for the Department of Education Technology, and they they hosted, like, different recruiting events, and so I was the designer and then got promoted to, like, the event coordinator or whatever. But so, like, as something that would be, like, an added display was I would bring the race car, and it was just our small the junior dragster one, so I could fit it in the a truck bed. I didn't need to have a trailer, and, like, sometimes we would drive, like, 2, 3 hours to do these events, but through that, I was able to get a sponsorship with a company that made these kits for classrooms, and we did a collaboration where we did a dragster kit. And so then I started going to schools, bringing the car, and actually being in the classroom with 3rd, 4th, 5th graders and helping them like cut out this dragster out of paper. We would tape it, piece it together, put wheels and axles on it, and race them and all this stuff. And yeah, it was so cool because it's like I guess early on I kind of had the values that I like education. I like being a positive role model for younger generation. So that's like yeah, it kinda goes back to your example of, like, you don't always have to do traditional meet and greets and, like, autograph signings and all that. Like, one of the members in the motorsports marketing tips group, he's been in there for, like, 5 years, Randy Parch. He's an amazing mentor to the younger people that are joining the group, but he is a boat racer in Florida, and he also does education and coaching and all that type of stuff with drivers to do boat racing, but he loves to do parades and all the community events, and he loves when the kids come by and they can come and sit in the boat because it is a smaller boat, so it's easy to to travel with. At least once a month, he's doing some type of community event, and they have a guy that dresses up in a Batman suit, so that way the kids, see Batman and they wanna come over to his tent, and just, like, little stuff like that, that, like, you don't think about usually of how does that affect my brand, or how can I use this to stand out, and how can I attract my target audience? You can experiment, you can try things, and I love that because when you have a brand, it's not like you have to do all or nothing, like, it can evolve and it can change over time, like what we mentioned, and, like, I've said my brand has changed quite a bit over the years, and I've gone away from some things, but I've gone back to some other things, and it grows with me as a person because
Yeah.
it's making my racing, and now one thing kind of like what you said about, like, to divide my audience is with me getting into off-road. That has divided my audience because my audience has been 100% drag racing fans, and I know I've lost some of my fans because I'm slowly getting out of drag racing and getting into something new, and it's just that's not the sport for them, and that's okay. But I'm not gonna get too upset about it because I feel like I have a new challenge now of how can I then grow my audience into one that loves both drag racing and off-road and introduce them to each side and learning how to navigate that.
You posted the other day, you put up like, which sport do you want to see me race more
Yeah.
of? And I was looking through the comments on there because it's something that we've talked about, right? Your audience being really drag race focused. And it was so cool to read through the comments and see how many people that were clearly following you from drag racing were so excited to see you just chase what you love and supporting you in the off road side of the world. And
Yeah.
it really got me thinking about your brand is more than what you do, and it's more than just being good at what you do. So, like, your brand, sure, you being an NHRA champion a couple times over is really strong proof of you being good at what you do, but it's not your brand. Your brand is the person that you are and the way that you show up, and the fan base that you built isn't just behind you because of what you do. It's because of who you are. And so as you're starting to change into a new path, you're still the same person, you're still the same brand, and it was really cool to see the people following you there.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I do have some great fans out there, and it does make me feel good knowing that they are supportive and that because I mean, my fans are a big value piece of my brand, and me stepping away from drag racing in 2020 like really put a halt to my growth. And then now here I am doing another transition. The ones that have stayed over the last 5 years, like, I love because 'cause they'll, like, comment on every post, like, I know who they are, and, like, I like to be social on social media and, like, get to know who the fans are, and so it means a lot to me to still have their support as I do go into this different world, and, I don't get a lot of hate, but I get a lot of, "When are you coming back to drag racing?" And it's like, I'm sorry, but I'm not. And then it's like, okay, and then they'll just, like, go away. And it's like, okay, like, and then, like, that affects my mood because then it's like, "Oh, man, like, I'm losing my supporters, my fan, like, my value's going down." It's like, "Okay, how can I then navigate this in a way that could still help grow my brand?" And, um 'cause, yeah, I feel like the last 5 years I've just kinda been in this, like, limbo mode, and it's like, I know, like, there is something else out there for me, but, yeah, it's like, okay, I've been very cautious about how am I how do I, like, present this, and but
Yeah.
I like to share that, like, this year, I've been sharing all the, like, raw, real moments of, like, "Hey, I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm gonna take you along with me." And especially, like, on YouTube, just been kinda documenting that and sharing, like, at the races of, like, "Hey, like, I don't know what I'm doing, but, like, I made a pass." Like, that's good. I don't know, but yeah, I think I talk about this in each episode, but yeah, just how much, like, I love short course and how it's really exciting, and I think the fans are supportive of it, which does help me out even more too to know that I do have their support.
Really like that you talked about being really authentic and vulnerable and open about what is going on in your life. And your brand is really built around that authenticity. Then we talked about, you can craft a persona that maybe isn't authentic, but it might serve a purpose. And there's no wrong way, to do that. But I will say that in talking to the partners that we work with and in just kind of keeping an eye on marketing as a whole and what's being effective right now, there is a lot more push for authenticity and authentic connection to your fans and to your products that you're pushing than I've ever seen in the past. I think when influencers kind of broke into the marketing scene, I think there was a lot of just like grabbing a product and putting it in somebody's mouth on a platform because it would sell. And people are getting wise to that. And we can tell when something is inauthentic as consumers, we can tell that. And when
Mhm,
people go out and start pushing brands that aren't aligned with their values, it shows. And I think that that's something that's, really powerful to talk about is like true authenticity is becoming more valuable as time goes on.
mhm. Yeah, I agree. Feel like we covered a lot in this episode today, from starting out with what if you showed up naked, right? And then, yeah, the importance of aligning your values with your sponsors and with your audience, but just knowing who you are first, like what are your values? What are your beliefs? What do you stand for? What do you not stand for? I think once you figure that out, and it doesn't have to be like you have to know like today, but take some time, I think, for our audience if they like maybe if they're someone that likes to journal, maybe they could just start writing down what they do support, what they don't support, because that's something that I did in the beginning. This book called B, it was one of the first ones that I read that really helped me like establish my brand and like what I want to be known for. So this is one that I've also recommended in my courses and stuff that I have. I feel like once you take the time to kinda establish your brand, it's going to make sponsorship a lot easier because then you'll kind of know like what path you're headed on and what companies are also going to be on that same track. And then to tie it in with authenticity, like, yeah, it's definitely something that I hear about too. And especially because like content creation is something that all companies want, but you can definitely tell if someone's just, a sellout. If they're just doing it for the money, that they don't actually believe in the products or they don't actually use it, you can definitely tell no matter how much they try. In racing, I think it's very easy to kind of spot that as well. Even if you don't know the person that well, I think it is kind of easy to see like, oh, like, yeah, like that maybe they're just doing it just to get the money. And it happens. It's happened to our team. We've done stuff just for the money, just to get a sponsor, and it was not something that aligned with our team and with our family. And it was something that almost hurt us. Thankfully, we were able to kinda cut it off before it did, but that was something where it's like that my dad had made that decision on his own without kinda thinking of what consequences could be or how it could represent our family, and so that's where, like, we've had an agreement now of, like, "Hey, like, we do this as a family, like, we need to all be involved in the decisions that we make."
Yes, that is so powerful. Yeah, and you're right, we have covered, so much today, and I think just leaving on that note of being true to yourself, true to your team, true to your brand is so powerful. I will make sure that we link out to both that book B as well as This is Marketing by Seth Godin. I'll link out to the workshops that I have put together built around branding as well, but let's call this one an episode. Megan, as always, I'm so glad to have you as a co-host here. Thank you.
Yeah, this is what I love to hopefully have the podcast do is to help our fellow racers out there improve their brand, improve their value, and hopefully they get some successful sponsorships as a
Yeah.
result.
Ultimately, let's just put more money back in their pockets.
Yep.
All right, folks. Well, it is time for us to sign off. Thank you so much for joining us today. And as always, we love you. Bye.
Bye.